What makes the most sense at quarterback today on Night of the Shield? Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Night of the Shield. I'm Jason Smith, aka the Oakland Knight, and today we're going to be talking about what is the best move for the Raiders at the quarterback position. Inquiring minds want to know. But first, I want to thank you all for hitting that subscribe button lately. I really do appreciate it. If you're new here, why don't you think about hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell so you can be updated every time I drop another video. And hey, while you guys are at it, go ahead and smash that like button so we can continue to move up the algorithm. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this. And I think the best place to start, to be quite honest, is with everybody's favorite owner, Mark Davis. Now, I know there's been a lot of comments in the comment section talking about Mark Davis, about his leadership, the lack thereof, how they feel like the organization is going to suffer as long as he is the owner. And, you know, anything is possible. You know, it's just as possible for Mark to get it right as it is for him to sell this football team, which I think, you know, you're better off putting all your eggs in the basket that he's not selling this football team, and that hopefully at some point he gets it right, because everything else is just speculation, right? And I'm going to be quite honest with you, okay? I'm not totally happy with the Davis family. I feel like there's been a ton of mistakes that even precedes Mark, right? I mean, this goes all the way back to Al, right? And not being able to get out of his own way, not being able to look at the system that he liked to run back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and say, you know what, I have to evolve with the time, right? I believe that Mark Davis gets that point, and I think he wants to evolve. I just think he's having a hard time finding the right people to help get him there. So I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room, but just really briefly with the real quick last statement on DC, okay? And that is, I don't really care what side of the fence you're on. I don't like to play drama. I know that there's a lot of drama right now inside Raider Nation. I've dealt with it back in 2016 myself. You know, this cannot become bigger than the Shield. All right. Not only what happens on the field, but what happens off the field with this fan base. But with that said, I think that DC and the Raiders both win. I really do. Yeah, we could talk about the mismanagement of the contract, not getting any draft compensation. That is a fail. That is a fail. But we also could talk about all the failures that Carr did himself. Like he's not innocent. He doesn't come out here smelling like roses, right? He's got to go prove it, and he has that opportunity. And I think that's why I don't think that this is a bad thing for Carr. I think this is actually a good thing. If we're as dysfunctional as we all say our franchise is, then he's got to be extremely happy that he has another opportunity somewhere else to go make a name for himself. So that's all I want to say about that. I mean, I wish the man nothing but the best. And again, I think it's a win-win. We needed to move on. We needed to shake some things up. You know, unfortunately, he's the casualty of this war, but I think that he has an opportunity now to say, you know what, I'm going to go out and prove you guys all wrong. And he has to make the right decision to make that happen. But I'm not here to talk about DC anymore. I just wish him the best. And I also wish our organization the best. And that's what's bringing us to our topic right now, which is the quarterback position, our future. What makes the most sense? You know, there was a lot of talk before Tom Brady retired that Tom Brady was the target. And I do believe that he was. And I also believe that Mark is feeling a bit desperate. And I think that's what bothers me the most. The fact that we're in a position again where Mark, our owner, feels so desperate to make a splash, especially in that position, as if no matter what, as long as we get a Brady or a Rodgers type of quarterback, all of a sudden that makes us contenders. I'm sorry, man. Like, we talked a lot about it last year even, and I heard so many people cover it, that this division, the AFC West, is insanely talented and was going to be insanely competitive. And even though the records don't show it, especially from the Broncos' perspective, and that largely in part to that offense and Russell Wilson's setback, which many people believe it was Hackett's fault, and maybe they're right? But here's my thing, okay? Sean Payton has been a proven offensive mind. They still have a defense. There's rumors that Rex Ryan might become the next defensive coordinator over there. That's not going to be an easy thing to deal with twice a year, right? You still got the Chargers that are still up and coming. They got some salary cap issues they got to work out, but they have a young quarterback. We already know what Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and that staff is bringing, right? We know that's going to be a challenge. This is not going to be a cakewalk, and that's only going to add the pressure on Mark Davis to tell this regime, hey, go out and get me a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I think our best bet would have been Tom Brady because at least we knew what we were going to get, right? An aging 46-year-old quarterback that is ready to retire and maybe even past that point. Maybe I think Brady made the right decision first and foremost, right? Don't let Father Time get the best of you. But at least we would have brought him in and we knew that it was going to be a 1-year deal. It wasn't going to cost us nothing but money. It wasn't going to cost us any draft picks, any capital. We're not going to sell our future for a guy like Brady. Pay him 1 year. We knew moving forward that we had options in this draft. We would even have capital and options for next year's draft, which has more talented quarterbacks coming out next year than in this draft. But there's a few good ones, right? And just because you come out of college highly rated doesn't mean that it's going to translate into the NFL. So it's a crapshoot either way. You have to take advantage of the opportunity that sits in front of you now, right? Which leads me into a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Look, I only have one problem with Aaron Rodgers. And that one problem leads to all the other problems that comes with going after a guy like Rodgers. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, right? Grabbing a guy like Aaron Rodgers is not going to piss me off. I'm not going to be upset about that. In fact, there is reason to be excited if we were to gain the services of Aaron Rodgers, right? More positive in the short term, and that's the key. In the short term, there's more positive in the short term, but at the end of the day, what is it going to take? I mean, right now, the man is sitting in the dark on a retreat. Now, granted, this is more of a life experience for Rodgers. This is not solely around football. He's not doing this so he figures out what he's going to do with his career. This is a whole life thing that he's on. He's on this movement of his whole life. This has nothing to do with solely football, but it is a part of it. And the fact that he even admits that himself, that this is one of the reasons why he's doing it, scares the living daylights out of me. I don't know how much we should truly give up. I guarantee you they're gonna want Waller, and I'm okay with that if that lessens the capital that we have to give up too. Because regardless if Rodgers traded for, we have to address a young quarterback in the draft. And this is where it gets shaky because what's it going to take to get Rodgers? And then, who do they target? How many quarterbacks in this year's draft do they feel is going to be someone that they could develop to make sure that we're not on a quarterback carousel for the future? And from my perspective, and I'll get into more of that maybe in another video, but the league is changing. I used to sit there and complain all the time about Al and not wanting to change his philosophies and how that set the Raiders back. I mean, Gruden was the same way, to be honest with you. Gruden couldn't get out of his own way. And I believe Josh McDaniels is at a crossroad himself. And Josh, what are you going to decide to do, Josh? You have a good system. You took a rookie quarterback and you made him a Pro Bowler. That's great. But as you saw in the Super Bowl, and throughout the league, whether it's a Lamar Jackson, Tyler Lawrence, Justin Fields, you got Jalen Hurst, Patrick Mahomes, even a guy like Herbert gets out of the pocket and makes plays with his legs. The league is changing. I never was a big fan of the running quarterback. I felt like they looked to run more than not. But more and more that I see some of these college players, they're keeping their eyes down the field much more than they did in the past. This league is changing. You need a dual threat. And is Josh going to be able to adjust his system to fit a quarterback that's a dual threat like that? I truly believe he can. It's not a matter of whether or not he can or can't. It's will he? And so, they have to evaluate that process and say, you know what, who is our target? Who do we really want? And are we going to have the capital to do that? And does it make sense now? Because if you go and get Rodgers, Okay, the guy threatens retirement every year. It's like 2 or 3 years straight now. The word retirement has comes up with Aaron Rodgers. So what is that going to cost us? Now I know Aaron Rodgers already talked about renegotiating his contract, making it more contract friendly for the next team. But what's that going to look like from a retirement perspective? And can we get the man to commit to at least 2 years? If we can't get the man to commit for 2 years, we're still forced to spend some capital to move up, or hopefully the right guy falls to us, or we take whatever falls to us. And I'm not exactly sure that's the right answer. But then again, I don't get paid millions of dollars to be a GM and make these types of decisions. But this is something that goes all the way back to the beginning of this conversation with Mark Davis. Mark Davis is putting that kind of pressure on winning now solely because we're not selling the right seats. But I don't think it's going to take an Aaron Rodgers to fill those seats. I think it's going to take true organizational change. And in order to see that, you have to see smart moves be made. I think there's plenty of serviceable quarterbacks that we could bring in for a year, 2, maybe even 3, that may not be the best option. And let's break that down. What does that look like real quick? Jimmy G has been talked about. We already know Stidham. I believe Stidham and Brissett, I still think that you bring those guys in as a backup. I think those are backup options moving forward. But a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, who I'm not a big fan of, he's injury prone. I just believe he's an older Derek Carr. I don't really see the future being that bright with a guy like Garoppolo, but I think he could be serviceable now, short term. And it's not going to cost us. None of those guys that we talked about right now or that I mentioned right now are going to cost us anything but a small salary. The range is going to be different. You could be looking at anywhere between 7 to 8 million, all the way up to about 12, 15. Garoppolo might demand a little bit more. But that's small potatoes if it's a short-term thing that we're asking. And, a guy like Garoppolo may be looking for more. I don't think Brissett and Stidham will be. So I think all those could be viable options. But what about, someone who's not talked about enough in this scenario, which is it's always tough. But Baker Mayfield is a guy that I don't believe is talked about enough. He made some mistakes in Cleveland. He said some things. He lost the faith of the ownership and some of his teammates. But, he's young. And I'm not trying to make excuses for the cat, but he talked his way out of Cleveland. He ends up going to the Panthers. It didn't work out there. Sometimes the system don't fit. The Panthers weren't necessarily in the best situation either. They blew that whole thing up again. They got a whole new head coach and everything over there. But what we saw happen with Baker Mayfield is he goes to a rant. Well, they beat us, number one, coming off the plane, and he has an arm. He has the talent, and he's very intelligent. Those are two things, right? He could throw the football accurately, and he's got a strong arm, and he's intelligent. Now, I'm not saying he's our future, but again, a guy that if you can convince him to even come in for a visit and have a conversation, it's not going to cost us draft capital. And I don't, depending on what he demands, he might demand a little bit more money, but he's going to have a prove-it deal, something that we could prorate for the future, which would take the pressure off us feeling like we have to go sell capital and settle for now. We have to start thinking long-term. Now, let me get into what I truly believe should happen at the quarterback position. Now, there's a bit of sacrifice to what I think should happen, and that is going into next season with a big asterisk, a big unknown. It's going to take the support of Mark Davis to really empower Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels to say, hey, if you think this could work, I think we saw enough from Stiddy to say he is not a franchise starting quarterback. But I do believe if you roll with the Stidham, right? If you were to say, Stidham, we're going to give you the opportunity to come here and be the man, right? Put it out there. Let's show us what you got. But we're drafting the future at the same time. Now, at this point, this organization has to make a commitment to the quarterbacks coming out this year, whether it's Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, right? AR-15, Hendon Hooker. It don't matter which one that you target, which one that you say, that's our guy moving forward. That's the guy that I see fitting this offense, and how Josh McDaniels feels about what he's going to do with his offense, which I hope he hybrids it a little bit and grabs a guy that has some running ability and allows him to make plays with his legs and his arms. However, knowing that going in lets them say, okay, now it's going to be worth selling some more capital to make sure that we get the guy for the future. Total sense. I don't think you give up capital to get an Aaron Rodgers and then tell yourself, I have to give up capital now to go and get that quarterback this year. And the only way that you get Rodgers and you don't feel that pressure is you have to put in that contract. You cannot retire, right? You have to basically tell Rodgers, hey, we come and get you. Dude, you have to commit to something. You have to commit to something that makes it worth it, because you going through another offseason where you want to do another darkness retreat and we sell all this capital for 1 year, it's not worth it, man. It's not worth it. They're serviceable quarterbacks. Everybody's worried about how Devontae's going to feel. Dude, Stidham got Devontae the ball. Devontae had a big game against the number 1 defense in the league. Stidham is serviceable. He's not the future. He's not going to guarantee us a playoff run. But if we could save and make the right moves on defense, anything's possible. We've seen it. But even if we go out and get Aaron Rodgers and we give up that capital, no matter who we bring in at quarterback, if we don't make the right moves on defense, it's inevitable. We're not going anywhere anyway. Aaron Rodgers doesn't secure us an opportunity. We can't 100% guarantee that. Does it better our odds? That's a whole different conversation. Yes, it will better our odds, but it's not going to guarantee us shit. It's just not. And anybody that thinks that that's going to be the case moving forward, you're selling yourself a false hope. There's no guarantees, man. There's no guarantees, because regardless of where you're at on the fence with Derek Carr can't get out of his own way. I'm going to be honest about the way that I feel. The man has arm talent. He's smart. He can read defenses, but he sucks under pressure. And guess what? This league is all about pressure. So if he can't handle the pressure, then what? So now you're putting the pressure on everybody else to be a different way around you. That's what was holding us back. That's what was holding us back. That was Carr's Achilles heel. You heard David Carr talk about his superpower being changing he never changed. He never had that type of power. He never had that type of power. Everybody has the ability to change the play at the line of scrimmage inside an audible of the plays that are called. And we saw him do that. It wasn't taken from him. That's a cop-out. It's a cop-out. I don't buy it. But with all intent and purposes, if Josh can turn a rookie quarterback into a Pro Bowler, he should have been able to get Carr to play well enough to get us into the playoffs. So again, it's two-sided here, right? It's just as much Josh's fault, Mark's fault, Dave's fault, Derek's fault, Patrick Graham's fault. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. This organization is a hot mess. And if you're going to create stability and consistency and actually make a big difference in your organization moving forward, you're going to have to pick a philosophy and stick to it. And putting pressures on Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels out in the second year and saying, because granted, look, Josh and Derek didn't get along. That was well stated in a lot of press conferences, whether or not there was some maneuvering that was happening there where we couldn't fully peg it, that was the problem. It's come out now that we know that was the problem. But look, Mark wasn't sold on the man either. So Mark is just as much to blame in this situation as not. And in fact, I think McDaniels went in there and stood up and said, both him and Dave said, I think we could do it with Derek. And I think maybe that's where Mark's frustration's at, to say, hey, I let you keep this guy for a year. Now we're losing draft capital. I'm saving money, which is a good thing because we could use the money. But you guys convinced me that you guys can make this happen. It didn't happen. So now I need results. That could be the real conversation here. But I don't think that necessarily spells out this is your last hurrah, because then you're going back to square one. And I don't believe that's the case, because now we're talking a whole different scenario next year if none of this works out. If none of it works out, now we're not only going to be maybe possibly looking for another quarterback, but we possibly could be looking out for another answer at head coach. Like at some point, dude, we have to pick somebody that has a philosophy that works. And I want to be honest, these two guys that come from a place that has that, at least has that. Let's see. It's not a guarantee, but man, let's see if they could pull it together. It's a hot mess, y'all. It's a hot mess. So let me sum this up. Let me sum this up and get out of here. All right. What is the best thing that the Raiders could do moving forward at the quarterback position? I think number one, it's not selling your future. You can't do it. Okay. I don't care who it is. All right. We're not in a financial place. Our team's not in a place where we can go out and even trade for Lamar Jackson. Let's just give up that dream. Okay. I know Aaron Rodgers is always going to be on the table till he's not. I still feel like it would take a type of contract negotiation restructure that I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers will do. Maybe he will. Maybe he was just holding it to Green Bay. Hey, look, he served them for 18 years. That organization owes that man something. We don't. So it has to be done from an intelligent perspective, done right, contract, guarantees, not only for him, but guarantees us that we're not just getting 1 year out of the guy. That's just my opinion. I'm okay with just a 2-year plan, but I'm not okay with the 1-year plan. I'm just not. I don't think it makes much sense. Which means my personal take on what we should do, and again, it could look like Jared Stidham in Draft the Future. It could look like Jimmy Garoppolo and the same thing. Or you could, maybe hope and invest into a quarterback that would have a little bit more upside, right? Like a Baker Mayfield that could come in here and maybe give you 3 or 4 years. Still a gamble, but at least you're not draft. You could put all your capital on the defensive side of the ball at that point. And if it doesn't work out, then you still have capital next year to really sell the ship like several teams have done to go get like a Caleb Williams out of USC. Okay. So there's always opportunity on the table. It'll cost us a lot more next year, granted, but I don't think that we have to feel the pressure in our situation because nothing's guaranteed. At the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is still the standard. He's in our division. Just is what it is. Aaron Rodgers, even if we get him, guarantee but 1 or 2 years, it's still not going to get us over the hump to really take out the Chiefs long term. Something we need to think about. And Herbert's still developing, and Russell Wilson might be back on his game. We just don't know. Anyway, I hope that you guys like this video. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. I know a lot of people from me reading the comments recently are not going to agree with everything I had to say, because if you're not hell-bent that Derek Carr was misrepresented, or you feel like we're not going to be shit until Mark Davis is gone, I'm not selling all that on that. I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket saying that that's not going to be the reality. At the end of the day, you can't make someone sell something they own. Just can't do it. I know that there's something coming up when his mom passes away. That would be the only way. So if you want to hope on that, good for you. I'm not. I'm gonna react and look at this team as if Mark Davis is the owner. He's got a lot to prove. Don't make no mistake about it. This guy's got a lot to prove himself. There's a lot that this organization has to figure out, but go ahead and give me your thoughts, good or bad. I know a lot of people may not agree with me, but I'm thinking the best 2 options would be a Stidham and draft now, or get a guy like Baker Mayfield and go for it next year for the quarterback, that there's some better prospects coming out, and take the pressure off of that happening right now. That's just my thoughts. Anyways, I appreciate you all. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, that notification bell on the way out. Hit that like button. Let's continue to move up the algorithm. And until next time, stay Raider strong. Night out.